In the city of Zhuangjing of the Great Xian Nation, specifically at the mansion of the Grand Preceptor, our protagonist of this story, Li Fan, was celebrating his birthday. And despite his old age, his imposing demeanor and admiration from countless people, especially beautiful women, were nothing short than the endless wine he drank throughout his years. You see, in the past 50-odd years, Li Fan went from having nothing to achieving the rank of Grand Tutor, and his power had overshadowed the world that no one could rival him. The story of it all would be enough to fill a multimillion-word novel. But when he remembers the time he first transmigrated to this world, he was nothing but a poor, struggling scholar. Now, looking back on his life, he felt accomplished, having achieved everything a man could ever want. Anyway, back to the birthday party. The entire top floor of the manor were filled with several dancers entertaining the guests under the influence of amazing alcohol and great music. It wasn't until one of Li Fan's subjects crashed the party with an alarming yet felicitous omen. He informed his lord, the Grand Preceptor, that the sky was ablaze with falling flames, a divine sign of an auspicious omen. Also, it looks like it was flying toward the manor. Li Fan rushed to the balcony of his manor to get a better look at what's going on, only to see, just as his subject described, flames were indeed falling from the heavens. But upon a closer look-up, it seems that two powerful figures, being the source of the flames, were actually battling it out. One of them yells the name Dao Xuanzi, telling this person not to take it too far. Everyone, including Li Fan, were absolutely stunned to see these godlike beings who hadn't even noticed their insignificant existence. But unlike the rest who were already on their knees and worshipping their magnificence, Li Fan was quick to realize the implications of the two fighting, even though he was still unable to comprehend how there were actual freaking cultivators in this world. Meanwhile, in the sky, the dark-haired cultivator Dao Xuanzi asked Kohong, the sturdy cultivator with a fluffy golden hair like a lion, if he seriously thought he would let him leave just because he fled to the land of immortal extinction. Dao Xuanzi then demanded for Kohong to hand over his cultivation method, or the fight won't end until one of them is dead. Kohong scoffed at such folly. It's precisely because he lacks a core formation method that he had been trapped at the foundation establishment stage for nearly 100 years. Now, his lifespan limit was approaching, and he was about to turn to dust. Having finally obtained this core formation method, how could he possibly hand it over to another? Dao Xuanzi couldn't agree more. The Golden Core Dao was a path one walks alone. And although there were many core formation methods in this world, there were far more cultivators trapped at the foundation establishment stage. And since it's come to this, with the path to longevity right in front of him, how could he possibly let Kohong go? Kohong laughed at the absurdity. They were brothers for 100 years. Yet now they draw blades on each other for a mere chance at survival. Kohong admits he was no match for Dao Xuanzi, and it seems he won't be escaping his fate in the current situation. However, there were so many mortals below, so he was wondering if Dao Xuanzi could withstand such a dense concentration of the immortal miasma. In reply, Dao Xuanzi just readied his sword for a devastating attack. And without a care in the world, he points the blade at his former companion. His expression suddenly turned furious as he questioned what Kohong was planning to do. Conjuring a giant golden dragon to counter Dao Xuanzi's purple blade, Kohong announced that perhaps he could find a chance to live if Dao Xuanzi was unable to handle the power of the immortal miasma. Then, moments later, the two powerful techniques clash, creating a massive explosion that lights up the entire sky and clouding the entire city of Zhuangjing with a deafening blast that reverberated throughout every alley. Seeing a battle of that magnitude, Lin Fan and his servants are completely gobsmacked. And right as that power slams into the entire city, Li Fan, with a panicked look on his face, realizes their demise was inevitable. It took a while for the dust to settle, and amidst the rubble of his home, Li Fan eventually woke up, only to find his wife and children dead. Coughing hard, he got up to see what's left of his mansion. There were dead bodies everywhere, and from the looks of it, he might be the only survivor. The prosperous city that was once full of life was now a living nightmare of fire and blood. And as far as the eye can see, there was indeed nothing but mangled bodies and collapsed buildings. After surviving such a catastrophe, likely not even 1 in 100 of the citizens remained. Li Fan drops to his knees and took a seat amidst the wreckage, absolutely livid that he'd lost everything because of just two cultivators who suddenly appeared out of freaking nowhere. He took a deep breath, then starts laughing in despair. Seriously, how the hell can there be cultivators in this world? From the moment onwards, like an obsessed fanatic the very moment he became an official, Li Fan used the power in his hands to search for any possible trace of the immortal path. After he became the imperial tutor, standing above all others, he scoured the entire world with the aid of his men, relentlessly searching for clues. From the north to the frozen sea, the south to the great ocean, the east to the ruinous abyss, and the west to the linked mountains. In all of Great Xian Nation, there wasn't a single shred of evidence that immortals existed. Li Fan had already given up, and having grown super old, he now even wonders if those two were even real. Looking up at the sky, he wants to know where they came from and what exactly they were. Annoyed, Li Fan thinks that fate was messing with him. So he activates a power called Huanjin. Suddenly, countless glowing subtexts appeared in front of him, and at the bottom was the phrase, "When the true becomes false, the false becomes true." Subsequently, a bright light shined with a dazzling brilliance as the Huanjin system announced that charging was complete. A virtualized current scenario was initiated, and Li Fan was asked if he wants to return to the initial anchor point. You see, Huanjin was the name Li Fan gave to his unique treasure. Its function was to turn truth into illusion and reality into virtuality. It turns everything he had truly experienced into a simulated, illusory experience, allowing him to return to a set anchor point, which was the moment he first transmigrated to this world. In fact, this was already his second life since transmigrating to the Great Xian Nation. In Li Fan's first life, although he had great ambitions, he was ultimately just an ordinary person. Li Fan wanted to become a Zhuangyuan but repeatedly failed the exams. After turning 30, he finally gave up on the idea of becoming an official and started a small business. Li Fan became a common wealthy patriarch, then married, had children, and lived out an ordinary life. It wasn't until he was old and on his deathbed that he finally awakened the unique treasure, Huanjin. This was what led to his unstoppable rise in this second life. Because after the Huanjin system charges, it allows him to restart this life and return to a breakpoint to begin anew. However, Li Fan couldn't restart just yet. He still had important things to do in this life, so he gave orders to a soldier to take care of the mess in the city. He was to order the garrison camp stationed outside the city to rush to Shenzhen and maintain order in the disaster's aftermath. Most of Xuanjing's buildings were destroyed, and after his trusted garrison camp took control of Shenzhen, not only could they expedite the post-disaster reconstruction, more importantly, Li Fan can stay in the barracks to oversee the cleanup efforts and secretly send people to investigate the whereabouts of the two cultivators. 1 month later, the ruined city of Shenzhen had only just begun to recover a semblance of life. Meanwhile, in Li Fan's private quarters, a subordinate reports that there was still no sign of the two cultivators. Li Fan, frustrated upon hearing this, knew he shouldn't have gotten his hopes up again. Anyway, since this was the case, he decided that there was nothing else to do and activated the Huanjin power to go back. He was then suddenly surrounded by blue energy and subtext, and after confirming his decision to restart his life once more, the transition of him going back in time, from his old age all the way back to his youth, was displayed in front of him. Several screens show moments from his life, and as he remembers the names of the two cultivators, he vowed to wait for them in 50 years' time. Li Fan then falls into a portal, determined to hunt the two immortals in his next life. After all, riches and honor were nothing but fleeting clouds to him at this point in his second life. It didn't take long for the system to regress Li Fan to the anchor point. In the first year, overjoyed, Li Fan acted out, and was almost forced by his aunt to drink an exorcism water from the village witch. Half a year later, he took the provincial exam, and although he was placed low in the 30s, he ultimately succeeded in becoming a jurin, bringing honor to his ancestors. In his second year, he took the metropolitan exam and passed. Li Fan performed exceptionally well in the palace exam, placed in the second rank, and was bestowed the title of Jinshi. He then pulled strings in Shenzhen and obtained the post of county magistrate for Jiangnan's one county. In his third year, he began to cultivate his trusted inner circle, and also successfully produced a batch of explosives and matchlock rifles. In his fifth year, refugees gathered to rebel against Prince Langya's manor. Li Fan led troops to the rescue, saving Prince Langya's family. The prince was deeply grateful to him. In the sixth year, Li Fan was promoted to prefect of Zhanghuai Prefecture and married the daughter of the vice minister of rights. In the seventh year, his wife bore him a son. In the 10th year, Princess Langya gave birth to a son. Li Fan personally visited to offer congratulations and presented a carefully prepared gift. In the 15th year, the emperor passed away, and Prince Langya inherited the throne, changing the era name to Shenzhen. Emperor Shenzhen summoned Li Fan to the capital, promoted him to vice minister of war, and ordered him to lead troops to suppress rebellions. In the 18th year, Li Fan wiped out the rebel armies, and Emperor Shenzhen reclaimed Li Fan's military authority and promoted him to Minister of War, appointing him Grand Tutor to the Crown Prince. In the 20th year, the Empress was suddenly implicated in a witchcraft case, and Emperor Shenzhen, furious, confined her to the cold palace. The crown prince secretly sought Li Fan's help, and he decisively agreed. Through private investigation, Li Fan found the person who framed the empress, clearing her name. However, the emperor did not release the empress from the cold palace. In the 25th year, Li Fan secretly received news that someone had reported him for privately visiting the empress in the cold palace. And in that same year, the emperor was assassinated while traveling. So the officials retrieved the empress from the cold palace. The crown prince then ascended the throne with the era name Kongning. In the 26th year, Li Fan was additionally ennobled as Grand Tutor and appointed Grand Scholar of the Deliberative Council, reaching the pinnacle of officialdom. He used this opportunity to eliminate dissent and build his own faction in the imperial court. In his 30th year, the people of the world knew only of the Grand Tutor, not the emperor. In the 31st year, the Empress Dowager became pregnant and bore him a son. In the 38th year, Emperor Hongning died of depression. In the 40th year, the Empress Dowager died of illness. In the 45th year, Li Fan's wife passed away. In the 46th year, Li Fan's eldest son died of illness. And in the 50th year, 2 immortals arrived from the ruinous abyss, destroying the city of Shenzhen. Li Fan only managed to narrowly escape with his life. The simulation ended, and Li Fan had to choose one from the 4 options to retain. The first option was an item in Li Fan's possession during this simulation. The second was his cultivation realm from the simulation. The third was the simulation memory of one person closely related to him. Of course, this memory can be inherited by that person. Then, there's the fourth, which was to forego the above choices to speed up the charging progress. Li Fan kept wondering if what he just lived through was real or just an illusion. Or was it all a simulation, an error in perception caused by it being too real? Or perhaps, upon reaching a certain level, the line between true and false no longer exists. After a brief contemplation, Li Fan sets aside the crazy thoughts and decides to just focus on the 4 options the system gave him. He thinks the first 2 options were self-explanatory. If he ever embark on the path of cultivation, those 2 would be a great help. Unfortunately, he was merely a mortal in this past life. As for the third option, there was no telling what anyone is truly capable of. Therefore, stability was paramount, and that only leaves the 4th option. Since Huanjin's virtualization requires charging, when he receives a fatal blow, Huanjin will consume the charging progress to automatically protect him. This was also why he was able to escape death several times in his previous life. Thus, the 4th option was the safest and most stable choice. Li Fan chose the 4th option and sped up the charging progress. Li Fan had lived 3 lives, accumulating 166 years in total. And about his mental age limit, he remembered in his last life it was only just over 900 years, but now it had increased to over 1,000. You see, when one carries too many memories, one's mental endurance reaches a threshold. Any excessive burden would crush the soul. This was the so-called erosion of time. However, the mental age limit will increase as one's mental fortitude strengthens. So as long as Li Fan step onto the path of cultivation, none of this will be a problem. The goal of his upcoming life was to learn the secrets of cultivation from those 2 cultivators. In 50 years, they will descend upon Shenzhen. With preparation against their lack of it, he might just have a chance of winning. Perhaps what he can rely on, besides guns and explosives, was the immortal miasma they spoke of. However, Li Fan just can't wait idly for 50 years. Since the 2 came from the ruinous abyss in the east, he can first send people deep into the bottom of the abyss to investigate. In his past lives, the most frightening thing was having no goal. Back then, he would often wake from the Empress Dowager's bed in the middle of the night, feeling an immense emptiness and confusion. He had already stood at the absolute pinnacle for a mortal in his past life, so it wasn't like he could go any higher. It would be the same even in another life. Power, pleasure, and the like. After repeating them so many times, they became tasteless as chewing wax. Perhaps, after some future reincarnation, he would have actively chosen to end his own life. But the appearance of those 2 cultivators showed him a brand new possibility. It was as if he was seeing a strange and alluring world beckoning to him. Li Fan wanna cultivate. He longs for a life with new adventures, and no one can stop him. With determination, he swears to cultivate the path of immortality. With the experience of 2 lives, everything went as smoothly as water flowing to its destination. Li Fan still participated in the imperial exams. But this time, with decades of experience and power, the essays he wrote were naturally far superior to his previous lives. In the provincial exam, the metropolitan exam, and the palace exam, he was placed first in all of them, achieving the triple first and shaking the world with his fame. Afterward, he still chose to take an official post in one county. And although there was much confusion and regret in the imperial court, his request was approved. Due to his great fame, coupled with his crystal-clear understanding of the temperaments of every official in the county, Li Fan quickly brought Wen County to heel. He then began to promote and cultivate his trusted subordinates from his past life. In his 4th anchor year, he searched in secret and found someone who could act as Prince Langya's body double, cultivating him as a trusted subordinate. In his 5th anchor year, he ordered his subordinate to pose as a refugee and attack Prince Langya's manor. Li Fan feigned a rescue, but in reality, he coordinated from the inside to kill Prince Langya's entire family. And at the same time, he had the body double take the prince's place. From then on, Li Fan secretly controlled Prince Langya's manor. In his 9th anchor year, the wedding of Prince Langya and the chief grand scholar's granddaughter proceeded as scheduled. That night, Li Fan stormed the bridal chamber and had conjugal relations with Princess Langya. In the 10th anchor year, Princess Langya gave birth to a son. Of course, the child was Li Fan's. In the 15th anchor year, the emperor was finally gravely ill, and after receiving the Edict of Succession, Li Fan rushed to the capital with his trusted subordinates. After Prince Langya ascended the throne, he aggressively placed his subordinates in the imperial court. With the chief grand scholar's covert cooperation, Li Fan easily seized control of the situation. In the 20th anchor year, after helping his son become emperor, Li Fan infected himself as grand tutor, stepping out from behind the curtain to the forefront, once again wielding power over the world. After this, not only did the wheels of the great Xian nation's development not become stagnant, but they turned even faster under his will. At his grand tutor's manor in the 35th anchor year, Li Fan asks a subordinate about the fog over the ruinous abyss. He learned that it dissipates for half a day every 15 years. The hooded subordinate reports that the immortal-seeking camp was ordered to station themselves by the ruinous abyss and observe day and night. It was just a few days ago that they finally made a breakthrough. He adds that after the great fog dispersed, a faint light could be seen shining from the bottom of the abyss. So they used a telescope to observe and actually discovered an inverted landscape. And although what each person saw was not identical, there were 10,000 mountains rising and falling, with magnificent structures hidden among them, barely visible. There were also towering cities on the plains, bustling with life, and with no less than 1 million people. And on top of that, there was even a city in the sky wreathed in rosy light, with all kinds of rare and exotic beasts flying about. It was truly incredible. After receiving a confirmation that the 2 cultivators came from the ruinous abyss, Li Fan wanted to know if they have found a way to get to the bottom of the abyss. But the hooded subordinate replied that they had tried various methods, but as soon as they descend to a certain depth, they were shredded by a sudden astral wind. The astral wind was so terrifying that even the strongest armor could not resist it for a moment. Li Fan dismisses his subordinate with a simple wave of his hand. Then, looking at the full moon, he realizes he would probably have to wait for the 2 cultivators after all. And so, the 50th anchor year eventually arrived in the great Xian nation, bringing with it a very eventful night. In the night sky, the 2 auras of power clash violently once again. And just like last time, Kohong yells the name Dao Xuanzi, telling him not to take it too far. However, this time around, several fiery projectiles were suddenly shot towards the 2 in the middle of their brawl. Kohong gets ticked off and wonders who dares to launch a surprise attack on them. Below, several armed soldiers, with a coordinated effort, fired their rifles relentlessly at the 2 cultivators. However, with a simple hand gesture from Kohong, all the bullets stop in midair as he wonders what they were. And with his curiosity piqued, he used his flames to disarm and summon one of the rifles from a soldier. Incredulous, Kohong finds the weapon fascinating. After all, it was using intricate mechanical structures in place of formations, and the explosive power in place of spiritual energy. To think that after several thousand years, the mortals exiled to this land of immortal extinction could actually research such an ingenious object, Kohong was amazed, though he also thinks it's a pity. The weapon was only effective in the land of immortal extinction where the great Tao was incomplete. But outside this place, it was just a pile of useless scrap metal. Also, at such audacity of mere mortals daring to make a move against them, Kohong, who originally felt a hint of guilt, now had an intolerable expression on his face. He questions if these insignificant mortals were just seeking their own death, before invoking his Tao art technique, the Flame Dragon's Roar. Suddenly, a massive fire dragon was formed, then charged towards every soldier in the manor. But as the enormous dragon whips through the entire city before charging towards its target, the utter destruction it left in its wake was so devastating that it took less than no time for the entire city to bore some resemblance to Li Fan's previous experience. Only this time around, a slight yet shocking deviation left Kohong stunned, wondering what was going on. Apparently, The flame dragon's roar of his was fundamentally not something mortals could withstand. Yet almost every soldier of Li Fan's was surprisingly much alive. In that moment, Dao Xuanzi also noticed that the weapons were soaked in mortals' blood. And after Kohong was tainted by the immortal miasma, his Dao arts were weakened. The usage of the immortal miasma meant that the enemy was clearly prepared. At this point, it's obvious they walked into an ambush the very moment they arrived. Since where they were was bizarre and dangerous, Dao Xuanzi suggests they shouldn't stay any longer. But before the two could bounce, a voice threatens that if they flee, the news that they obtained a core formation method would spread throughout the entire cultivation world the very next day. Dao Xuanzi and Kohong immediately panicked since only the two were supposed to know about this. They start to wonder who could have leaked the information. But before they could react, several cannonballs heavily condensed with the immortal miasma were fired at them. Furious, Kohong yells that the soldiers were courting death, then hurl a massive flame towards the cannonballs. Dao Xuanzi senses the danger in that moment and tried to warn Kohong to dodge instead. But it was too late. Kohong's flames only managed to trigger all the cannonballs to explode, releasing the immortal miasma. The entire night sky above what remains of the city were coated with heavy raindrops of the immortal miasma, dyeing everything red. And on the ground, somewhere amidst the wreckage was the two cultivators, now surrounded by dozens of armed soldiers. A soldier informed them that their grand tutor had given an order for their lives to be spared if they surrender. Dao Xuanzi, momentarily shaken, scoffs at the idea of surrendering. But before he could actively retaliate, he sees Kohong's storage ring hovering in front of him. Knowing the implication of this, Dao Xuanzi, with a look of horror, turned his head in his friend's direction, only to see him advising that he leaves with his storage ring, then dies immediately after. The very moment after Kohong's death, a large golden dragon emerged from his body and flies into the night sky above the burning city. The dragon's spirit is then transformed into a tree branch floating in the air. It is then declared that the Foundation Establishment cultivator, Kohong, cultivated for 205 years, achieved his Dao foundation with the mystical object, the Qiu dragon branch. And in the land of immortal extinction, he was besieged by several thousand mortals and was carelessly injured by the immortal miasma. His cultivation was instantly lost, and his lifespan neared its end. Now, his body perishes and his Dao vanishes, returning the Dao to the heavens. A soldier suddenly speaks up in that moment, telling Dao Xuanzi that their grand tutor has no intention of fighting him to the death. If he gives up on resisting, his life would be guaranteed. Meanwhile, nearby, Li Fan watched the entire scene with a cold and detached expression. He seemed to have heard a strange voice from the sky when Kohong died just now. But what that voice was no longer important because it seems capturing the two immortals in this life was no longer possible. Also, he didn't expect the immortal miasma to be so lethal to cultivators. Back to Dao Xuanzi, he got up and informed the soldiers that he didn't know who they were, nor did he know their purpose. However, he and his brother were plotted against by them, resulting in his death and the loss of their Dao. Now, there was nothing more to be said, so he absolutely cannot accept this. This puppeteer, hiding behind these mortal soldiers, and even using the immortal miasma, a despicable thing scorned by all cultivators, to eliminate his brother, Kohong, was something he feels wasn't worth it for him. Dao Xuanzi's eyes were filled with rage, teething on the edge of madness as he calmly reminded everyone that they have all seen his brother's Foundation Establishment mystical object. Now, he invites them to take a look at his. Dao Xuanzi slowly took off into the night sky, and with a gesture of his hands, he exclaimed with a chilling tone, "With the wonders of heaven and earth, I build my Dao foundation, a sword named Dao Xian." Dao Xuanzi then invite the spectators all to view it. Suddenly, a freaking gigantic sword about the size of the mountain descended from the sky and crashed directly into what was left of Xianjing. The destruction was inescapable, so Li Fan immediately activated the power of Huanjin and found himself back inside the virtual simulation space. He clutched his chest after experiencing firsthand the power of a cultivator at the peak of the Foundation Establishment. If it weren't for the immortal miasma, even if Li Fan reincarnated 100 times over and used countless schemes, it wouldn't be enough to pose a threat to Dao Xuanzi and Kohong. Honestly, Li Fan also didn't expect the immortal miasma to directly cause Kohong's body to die and his Dao to vanish. He originally thought when they called each other brother of 100 years it was just talk. He didn't expect their relationship to be so extraordinary. When they were attacked, Dao Xuanzi called out to warn Kohong. Kohong, knowing he couldn't escape death, willingly gave the core formation method to Dao Xuanzi. And Dao Xuanzi, seeing Kohong die by the ambush, was unable to accept it and gave up his chance to live, striking out with a mutual destruction sword art. This all shows that the two truly shared a friendship beyond the ordinary. And about the Golden Core Dao, Li Fan remembers Dao Xuanzi stating that it was a path one walks alone. He deduced that immortal methods probably could not be cultivated together. And if that was the case for men as close as brothers, Li Fan curiously wondered what the cultivation world outside really was like. It seems that no matter how dangerous the path ahead was, Li Fan would not waver. Furthermore, with the help of the Huanjin system, as long as he was careful enough, no predicament should be able to stop him. Last time, he chose to attack both of them at the same time. Perhaps the next time, he can choose to win one of them over. Li Fan's mental age limit only increased by a few dozen this time, and it seems he was nearing his limit. If he counts the life before he transmigrated, this was already his 5th life. The path to seeking immortality was truly difficult, and he hopes the 50 years he was about to begin anew won't be wasted. So, in the 35th anchor year of his new life, Li Fan ventured into the endless ruinous abyss. And from the experience of the last simulation, he knew that the dense fog over the ruinous abyss dissipates once every 15 years. At present, he was there precisely to see it with his own eyes. And after an unknown amount of time, a massive amount of white fog was forced to erupt from the ruinous abyss, rushing straight to the sky like a reverse waterfall. This great wind lasted for a good quarter of an hour before the heavy fog finally dispersed. Li Fan took out the telescope and looked toward the bottom of the ruinous abyss. And according to the intel he had, the scene that appears at the bottom of the ruinous abyss was different for everyone who looks. But upon looking through the telescope, Li Fan could only see a dark abyss with a white light at its center. Then suddenly, the view changes and he sees ruins with an inscription. The path to immortality was dead. Li Fan, shocked and a bit puzzled, wonders what on earth happened in that place and to the world of cultivation. Soon, the scene shifts to Li Fan's 50th birthday, in his 15th anchor year. Ko Hong yells furiously at Dao Xuanzi, reciting the same line as in the previous lives. Then, Li Fan's squad of soldiers attack with their rifles. Only this time around, they only attack Ko Hong under the banner of Dao Xuanzi. Ko Hong, stunned and a bit puzzled, wondered how it was even possible as he blocks the bullets. And although he couldn't comprehend why, he also starts to wonder if Dao Xuanzi already knew he would flee to the land of immortal extinction. Ko Hong's confirmation immediately solidified when he noticed that the bullets were laced with the immortal miasma. He yells at Dao Xuanzi, calling him a despicable friend. Meanwhile, Dao Xuanzi, shell-shocked, was just as confused as his friend. He didn't know why the mortals below were attacking Ko Hong under his banner, and were even using the immortal miasma. He explains to Ko Hong that they weren't under his command, then suggests they get the hell out of there. But in that very moment, Li Fan yells from below, questioning why Dao Xuanzi was going back on his promise. Li Fan then informs Ko Hong of their deal with his friend, stating that as long as they helped Dao Xuanzi eliminate him and seize the core formation method, he would lead the clan out of the immortal Forsaken Land. Ko Hong was enraged at this point. He asked his friend if he still insists on his innocence since besides the two of them, no one knew about the core formation method. Dao Xuanzi, done with this nonsense, decides to find the culprit, Li Fan, who was still running his mouth after revealing his knowledge of the core formation method. Li Fan adds that they had incurred the wrath of the masses for the sake of the immortal miasma Dao Xuanzi spoke of. Now, public resentment was boiling over. So if the immortal master cannot keep his promise and lead them out of the immortal Forsaken Land, he fears it won't be long before his clan dies without a burial place. Annoyed by the false guilt-tripping, Dao Xuanzi charges towards what he believed to be Li Fan, a shameless villain who needs to shut the fuck up. Dao Xuanzi crash lands with a reverberating boom, sending dust and debris flying. Dao Xuanzi spots a radio, which he believes was an artifact. At the same time, Li Fan accuses Dao Xuanzi of trying to permanently silence them. Gritting his teeth, Dao Xuanzi was surprised as to how cautious the enemy was. He instantly destroys the strange artifact, but the damage was already done. Ko Hong, full of righteous fury, accuses his friend of betraying their 100 years of friendship all for pure greed. If he wanted the core formation method, why couldn't he challenge him for it? But resulted to so many underhanded tricks. Ko Hong decides not to flee anymore and chooses to challenge Dao Xuanzi. If his friend has the skill, he should come at him. Ko Hong activates his Flame Dragon's wrath and charges towards Dao Xuanzi, who lets out a helpless sigh after being cornered. With a massive fireball hurled at Dao Xuanzi by the summoned Flame Dragon, Dao Xuanzi calmly counters with his sword. The two attacks collide, creating an explosion. Then, very abruptly, another radio announces Li Fan's decision and reason in switching sides. Since Dao Xuanzi was fickle and vindictive, Li Fan explains he's afraid there would be no escape for him and his men if he wins. So he now ordered his soldiers to assist the immortal master Kohong in dealing with Dao Xuanzi. Upon hearing this, Kohong laughs at his friend, who always prided himself on being noble, but was actually a despicable person who got screwed over by faith and was suffering a backlash. Well, it's as the saying goes, he who commits many injustices is doomed to self-destruct. Dao Xuanzi gets ticked off and calls his gullible friend a fucking fool. But Kohong was far too gone to care or reason with. After all, his friend fancied himself clever, so why was he now deserted by everyone? This was what they call being a victim of one's own cleverness. Kohong, who had recently mastered a new Dao technique, declared that this was the perfect time to test it out. He activated another Dao technique, the imprisoning dragon. A cage made of flame suddenly imprisoned Dao Xuanzi. And to break free, Dao Xuanzi, in rage, enlarges his sword and breaks free with ease. He made his way back in the night sky, fed up with being on the defense. He summoned his Dao Foundation sword and went on the offensive. Dao Xian appears in the sky in all its glory, ready to destroy everything in its path. But Kohong challenges Dao Xian's Dao with his own, invoking his dragon transformation technique, which was the Dao Dragon Staff, a golden dragon to face Dao Xuanzi's giant sword. But before the two Dao summons could clash, Li Fan and his men intervene, lending Kohong a helping hand. They attacked Dao Xuanzi with explosives filled with the immortal miasma, and upon contact, they exploded, releasing the immortal miasma, which instantly clouded Dao Xuanzi. All wounded, Dao Xuanzi let out an ear-piercing cry, and soon realizes that his Dao dragon branch has been hit. It starts to grow rapidly from within him, then sprout outward. The branches instantly grew and took over his entire body. And eventually, Dao Xuanzi's body gets completely consumed, leaving a lifeless corpse. Anyway, just like Kohong's death in the previous simulation, it's announced that the Foundation establishment cultivator, Dao Xuanzi, cultivated for 201 years and established his Dao Foundation with the wondrous item, the rusted sword Dao Xian. However, in the immortal Forsaken Land, he fought with another and was ultimately killed at the hands of the Foundation establishment cultivator, Kohong. Now, his body has perished and his Dao has vanished, returning to the heavens. Li Fan was quick to notice that the voice also appeared when Kohong died before. He made his way to Kohong and introduced himself. Li Fan extend his greetings and respectfully implore Kohong's mercy to save the lives of the 1,000 souls of his clan. Kohong realizes Li Fan was the one whose voice was echoing from all directions earlier. He questioned why a mere mortal dared to interfere in a battle between cultivators. Li Fan explains that he was merely seeking a chance of survival after realizing that his clan would have perished if Dao Xuanzi won the battle. Kohong finds this harsh and Lin Fan takes the opportunity to remind him of the promise Dao Xuanzi made. But Kohong explains that for 100 years, Dao Xuanzi had always appeared to be a man of his word, but in reality, he acts without any principles, even deceiving mortals. He also adds that great immortal severing formation at the ruinous abyss was incredibly dangerous, even for cultivators, requiring a great deal of effort just to leave. So how could they possibly take mortals with them? Li Fan, shocked by the revelation, asks if Kohong also didn't know how to leave the land of immortal extinction with a mortal. Kohong casually confirms this before Li Fan suggests they find somewhere private to talk. In an underground shelter of the manor, Li Fan again wanted to confirm if it's true that mortals cannot be taken along when leaving the immortal Forsaken Land. Kohong had no reason to lie to Li Fan, and simply reminds him that he was a mere mortal. Perhaps a golden core stage cultivator could protect him, a mortal, while breaking through that great immortal severing formation. But for someone with a Foundation establishment stage cultivation base such as himself, it was absolutely impossible. Li Fan tried to ask for any other alternative. Some hope for mortals like them to someday leave this world. Kohong reiterate that to leave the immortal Forsaken Land, one must pass through the great immortal severing formation. But with the frail body of a mere mortal, it was utterly impossible to pass through. And besides, Li Fan was already old enough to have one foot in his grave. Why was he so obsessed with leaving the land of immortal extinction? Wasn't he satisfied in being a local emperor? Li Fan didn't answer, but wanted to know if it was possible for his descendants to leave if they could cultivate to the Foundation establishment realm like Kohong. Upon hearing this, Kohong laughed at the absurdity. You see, there was not a shred of spiritual energy in the land of immortal extinction, making cultivation impossible. Also, not only was it a fact that immortals and mortals were perpetually separated, but mortals in the land of immortal extinction were covered in miasma. So how could they possibly cultivate the path of immortality? Kohong then advised Li Fan to give up on this idea. For mortals like him, if they wish to cultivate, They must first go to the outside world to reconstruct their bodies and wash away the miasma. Otherwise, even if the great Tao to immortality were placed right before them, they could see it but never be able to touch it. Frustrated, Li Fan, once again, asks if there was really no way out for mortals like them. And the very moment Ko Hong confirms there wasn't, Li Fan got up and respectfully took his leave. Ko Hong only felt that something was off when Li Fan suddenly stopped short as the door closes behind him. But by then, it was too late. The underground shelter had instantly been filled with the immortal mortal miasma. Ko Hong screams in pain, realizing he's fallen into a trap. Outside the cave, Lin Fan listens to Ko Hong's agonizing screams, and with a cold look, he declares that if immortals and mortals could not coexist, then how could he ever trust the words of an immortal?